What's up, y'all? This is Aaron Munoz with Out and Loud, Florida, and I want to transplain a couple of things to you. Genitals aren't Legos. Y'all do realize that, right? Like, genitals aren't pieces that, like, we're born with one and we snap it off and then go to the store and buy a new piece to replace it and snap it on. It doesn't work that way, although it would make a lot of people's lives a lot easier. This is why the term sex change sounds silly and outdated. It doesn't work that way. Transition is something that takes years, it's a gradual process, and it's different for everybody. Now, transition aside, genitals, genitalia, occur on a spectrum, kind of like gender. You're used to seeing this kind of piece or this kind of piece, right? You're used to seeing a penis or a vagina. But the fact of the matter is that despite the fact that these are the most common configurations, they're not the only configurations. They're just the two ends of the spectrum. Genitalia and bodies in general occur on a biological spectrum. In fact, if genitals, body parts, were Lego pieces, they wouldn't really so much be this piece or this piece. It'd be more like, you know, that giant Lego store, like in Legoland, that has every piece known to mankind? Pieces that are all these crazy shapes that you didn't even know existed. Pieces that fit together in all these new and creative, different, sexy ways that you never could have imagined. Am I getting too graphic here? Listen. If you're not into penises, or you're not into vaginas, that's totally cool. Your consent is to be given out at your discretion. Yours only. Having a genital preference is not a problem. Nobody's saying that you're transphobic for having a genital preference. I have a genital preference. I prefer people with penises, although I may be attracted to all kinds of genders. That's my personal experience. And I don't believe that as a trans person that I am particularly transphobic for having said genital preference. However, realize that when you say that you would never date a trans person, or that you would never be attracted to a trans person, or that you would need to know that someone is trans in order to know whether or not you can be attracted to them, realize that that is rooted in some problematic ideas, such as the idea that all of trans women's bodies are the same, or all of trans men's bodies are the same. The idea that genitals are one or the other and don't exist on a spectrum. The idea that all trans people are the same in general. The fact of the matter is, if you're saying that you would never date trans women, when what you mean is that you're not into dick, you should kind of stop and think about the problematic roots of those ideas. There's nothing wrong with consenting or not consenting to a certain kind of sex. However, grouping an entire group of people into one body type is inherently problematic. Just like not being into a particular black person or a particular brown person doesn't make you racist, but saying that you would never be into a black person or saying that you would never be into a brown person is rooted in some racist, problematic ideas about the fact that all people within said group are one certain type of way, a way that you're not attracted to. Again, realize that consent and your preferences are one thing, but assuming that all trans people fall under those things that you either prefer or don't prefer is problematic in and of itself. Now listen, if we're talking about genital preference and you, for example, find yourself head over heels attracted to a trans woman who happens to, I don't know, have a fully functioning vagina just like the ones that you're used to, but you're still not okay with dating her because you're just weirded out by the fact that she's trans and weirded out by the fact that she was assigned male at birth, then sorry, but yeah, that's transphobic and rooted in some deeply cis-sexist attitudes. Now, if that's just the way it is and you're weirded out by it and you can't get past that, then consent is still a thing and you still don't have to sleep with a trans person. However, just admit that that's based in some transphobic ideas. If the only reason you don't want to have sex with them or to be involved with them has nothing to do with their actual genitalia, but the very idea that they are trans and were assigned otherwise at birth. Again, no one's forcing you. And if you're not into it, you're not into it. Just be willing to admit that sometimes the things you're not into are rooted in some problematic sources. And again, I'm going to repeat it because I can't believe it's a conversation or a debate or a controversy. But no matter how you feel and no matter how weirded out you may be, it doesn't give you a right to hurt anybody. It definitely doesn't give you a right to murder anybody. That's just plain and simple. It's not understandable. It's not a, well, you can't blame them situation. If somebody snaps and murders somebody because they couldn't handle some information they weren't ready for, it's their fault, not the victim's fault, not anyone else's fault. The fact of the matter is, if you find yourself attracted to a trans person, the piece that you're so afraid of may or may not even be down there. So don't assume that all trans people have the same kinds of bodies. And regardless of what your preference is, regardless of where you dole out your consent, regardless of even whether you're disgusted disgusted by or despise trans people, there's never ever a valid excuse to hurt or especially kill someone based on their body type, based on their trans status, whether it's something that you expected or not. If somebody has a body part that wasn't what you expected, that's on you, not them. And if you have a problem with it, walk away. You can end the consent right there. No one is saying that you can't not consent to something you're not comfortable with. You have the kind of sex that you are comfortable with, and that's all. However, it's never, ever, ever going to be a valid excuse to hurt, maim, or kill someone. 16 transgender women have been killed, murdered this year so far in the United States. All of them are trans women of color. It's important that in these conversations we're having, that we're realizing the kinds of violence and misguided information that we're perpetuating. So pay attention, inform yourselves, and be kind to one another.